Hello, family. Welcome to African Esquire TV. I'm your host, Tony Cherie. So, a lot of people have been talking about this whole Oprah Winfrey situation, and I wanted to give my own 2 cents. Now, if you haven't heard, Oprah Winfrey has been catching a lot of slack, a lot of verbiage towards her way because of this perception that she may just be targeting black men. Now, this started really when Oprah, after the Leaving Neverland documentary, she had allowed some of Michael Jackson's accusers who accused him of molestation onto her platform to interview them. Now, the way that she was interviewing Michael Jackson's accusers, it was as if she was assuming that what they were saying was true. She didn't push back on what they were saying. She didn't really provide outside evidence. She didn't give the Jackson family an opportunity to give their side of the story, or to allow Michael Jackson's attorneys to give their perception of what happened. Instead, she only allowed the accusers of Michael Jackson, who accused him of molesting them when they were children, she only allowed them on her platform. Now, of course, if you're only allowing the accusers on your platform, you might not be coming out here and saying, I believe that they are telling the truth. You might not be out here saying that I am against Michael Jackson or I believe Michael Jackson was guilty, but the inference is that you believe that Michael Jackson was guilty. And as I stated, if you watched any clips from that interview, if you watched the interviews that she did of his accusers, she was talking to them as if she was assuming that it is true that you are victimized and Michael Jackson was the person who victimized you. So give it a couple months, and here we go. Now again, Oprah Winfrey is coming out with a documentary, and the documentary is about the accusers of Russell Simmons, who has been accused of some sexual misconduct. Now, it's interesting. A lot of people, they're asking the question, how did you jump over Harvey Weinstein? How did you jump over Matt Lauer? How did you jump over Jeff Epstein, the man who was recently killed? How did you jump over all of these people who have been committing sexual assault and get to Russell Simmons? There's a lot of people who think that there's a lot of evidence, first of all, supporting Russell Simmons. For instance, he actually had done, I believe, like 9 lie detector tests about these people who have accused him of sexual misconduct. So there's a lot of evidence that supports the notion that Russell Simmons may be falsely accused, but she's doing something similar, which is giving the accusers a platform without giving the counter evidence, without allowing the other people to have their say so as to what actually happened, without allowing Russell Simmons to tell his side of the story. So here's my assessment of the whole situation. Oprah Winfrey has been showing you guys signs of this for a long, long time. If you have been paying attention to Oprah Winfrey, she's been one of those people who will speak towards things in order to support the white supremacist narrative of black people. For example, Oprah was one of the people who came out really hard against hip-hop, and we know hip-hop is not a perfect genre, but we also know that hip-hop in many ways is just a reflection of what's going on in the ghetto. So if you're going to condemn hip-hop and not condemn the systemic racism that creates the conditions that people are speaking about in hip-hop, that's very hypocritical. Yet she has come out against hip-hop like a lot of people who are in the public sphere, because this gives her credence inside of the eyes of a lot of white middle-class Americans. And you have to understand, although Oprah is a black woman, her strongest her power really, and her strongest audience is white middle-class America, particularly white middle-class American women. So because of that, it's not uncommon that she has often bought into notions that white America feels, or that she has supported narratives that white America will propagate against black people in order to appease her fan base. Now, if you consider the fact that when it comes to rape and the Me Too movement, and if Russell Simmons is guilty, if Michael Jackson is guilty, obviously they need to be Michael Jackson's passed away, but obviously, if Russell Simmons has raped someone, he should be punished. This is not saying that he is or isn't. I don't know. I've never been in a room with any of these people, so how am I going to give my assessment of whether or not they're guilty of rape? However, what I do know, and this is historical, is that in America there is a rape culture. And a lot of people, when they say rape culture, they're thinking about this culture of men going after women and abusing them and sexually assaulting them. That is absolutely a rape culture in America. However, there's another rape culture in America that no one talks about, and that is the culture that believes that black men are natural predators. That is the culture that believes that black men will sexually assault white women and that they're presumed guilty until proven innocent whenever it comes to accusations against black men. And we've seen this come up over and over again throughout history. How many black men have been lynched? You think about Emmett Till. He was killed just for, some people say he may have whistled at a white woman. Some people said he might have just smiled at the white woman. Some people said he might have just winked at the white woman. It doesn't matter what. He was lynched because of the idea that this dangerous little black man, who was a boy at the time, but this dangerous child, and you know, with black children, they are often not allowed to be children. They're often viewed as being adult-like, as being manly, even if you're not a man. So this dangerous black boy was sexually promiscuous to a white woman by possibly just by looking at her, or even just whistling. And I don't believe he whistled, because who would whistle at a white woman down in Jim Crow South? But you know, just making some type of just giving the white woman some type of signal, that was a threat in itself. So you think about the black men who have been lynched over and over again by the criminal justice system. We have to be very cautious about the criminal justice system whenever we're dealing with rape allegations, because we have to understand that the culture is that we are guilty, especially whenever it's a white woman that's being the accuser. This is just the culture of America. I'm not saying anything to say that white women can't be raped by black men. Of course they can. However, we know that there are stereotypes, there is racism that is inside of the very fabric of this country, and one of the racial perceptions is that black men are natural predators to white women. So when you look at Oprah, and she doesn't want to talk about people who don't look like her, she only wants to talk about black men who are being accused of rape. This is very typical to me towards her style of presentation, because she's not challenging the mainstream white American perception of black men. Instead, she's supporting it. Instead, she's giving them more credits to feel like that black men are predators of white women. So this is not surprising from Oprah. This is not surprising from a lot of people who go towards these ways, because we have to be honest, these are ways that you get rewarded by the system, by the white supremacist system that supports people who are willing to go after black people. Don't think that because this is inside of Hollywood that this is something separate from what goes on in the criminal justice system. Hollywood is just as linked to the racist history of America as the criminal justice system is, as the economic system is, as the education system is. It's all linked together. So Oprah doing this is just her appeasing the white mainstream, who is, I said, her fan base. And in many ways, if you are so beholden to your fan base that you are willing to betray the well-being of your people, and I say the well-being not because I'm saying that I know Russell Simmons is innocent or guilty. I'm saying the well-being because I know that if we keep putting out these documentaries where we're not allowing counter evidence to be shown, where we're not allowing the full story to be told, but we're only depicting black people in one way that shows that that plays into the narrative that we are sexual promiscuous, that we're sexual predators. If we're only putting out these types of documentaries and again skipping over the many white people who have been doing the same thing, you know, it'd be different if she did Michael Jackson and then did Jeff Epstein, or did Michael Jackson and then did Harvey Weinstein. Then people wouldn't be so up in arms. But the fact that she went from Michael Jackson to Russell Simmons, despite the fact that the people who are white are not getting convictions, you know, R. Kelly is getting convicted. We know R. Kelly did do it. He's getting convicted. Michael Jackson, he faced criminal charges. Bill Cosby, he's in jail. We know that the black people are getting convicted, whereas these white people, the white men who are doing these same things, are able to walk away scot-free. So when I say she's betraying the well-being of our community, I'm saying that she's playing into the narrative, she's supporting the narrative, and she's giving the narrative more ammo by only showing black people being depicted as predators of white women. Black people being depicted as predators in general, because in this case of Michael Jackson, he was accused of molesting white boys. So when you're willing to betray the well-being of your community you're willing to play into racial stereotypes to appease your fan base, then you have to understand that when you're willing to do that, you are a puppet of Hollywood. You are an agent of the white supremacist system, and you are someone who has been favored for it, someone who is being rewarded for it. There's a great reward in betraying Black people, unfortunately. We see this all across the board. We see this in the civil rights movement. We see this inside of the corporate world. We see this inside of Hollywood. If you are willing to betray Black people and betray our well-being, betray our community as a whole, then there are rewards for you. And so she will be rewarded. I know Black people were all up in arms on Twitter, just like they were with Jay-Z and everything, but guess what? You will be rewarded if you're willing to betray us. After the storm clears and we've all forgotten, she will be rewarded for this, as she has been rewarded in the past for putting out false narratives about our community. So I say all this to say, this is typical in Hollywood. This is what happens often, over and over again. We should not be surprised. And we have to, I think, have this takeaway that we have to, before we elevate people in our community as figures in our community, before we elevate them as a voice of our community, because a lot of people have elevated Oprah as being a voice of the Black community. And I'm sure she's done a lot of good in the Black community, just like she's done bad. People are not, it's not one Black or white. There's people who do good and do bad. But the thing is, we have to be careful when we see that a person has their fan base, has their supporters not in our community. Meaning if their fan base is middle-class white America or rich white America, people who don't have the same interest as us, those are their supporters. Those are the people who they got their position from. Those are the people who elevated them. Then do not for a second consider that they're going to jeopardize their position for our community that did not elevate them, their community that they did not come through us to get where they are. That's where we are. We always have to be careful with these academics. I noticed a lot of the civil rights, so per se, academics, a lot of those people, you can think about different people throughout the civil rights movement or different people in the academic circles. And a lot of them got their notoriety from white institutions or from white power structures. Now, when they get their power from the power structures and not from the community, how much are they going to speak to the community? How much are they going to address the issues that pertain to the community when they didn't come through us? So we have to understand that in any of these circles, any of them, it doesn't matter what type of, if it's football. I said the same thing on my Twitter about Michael Vick. A lot of people are defending him like they forgot that he was one of the ones that went after Kaepernick and said that Kaepernick wasn't being blackballed and that Kaepernick needs to shave his head. We forgot the fact that, number one, Michael Vick has been propagated by the same white institution that also blackballed him, because afterwards he went on an apology tour and to get back in their good graces, and he was allowed to play again. However, now here he is facing backlash for something that he did a long time ago. People are willing to forget the fact that he kind of abandoned us, the fact that he went and stood for the other side. We forgot his allegiances. His allegiance wasn't to us. His allegiance was to him and the people who put him in power. So it's the same thing. Be very careful about these entertainers. That's basically the takeaway. These entertainers, these athletes, these activists, these public figures who did not get their positions from us. Don't for a second think that they're for us. To me, the presumption has to be that you're not for us unless you show us otherwise. And there are people who definitely show us otherwise. There are definitely people who got into their position from the power structure, but once they got into their position, started fighting for Black people like crazy. But those people are few, and they're not a lot whenever you think about the people who outnumber them. So I just say that to say, don't assume, just because someone looks like you, just because they do some things for the community, just because they talk that Black stuff. They might be talking about discrimination, talking about the prison industrial complex, talking about things, and you're like, oh, I see, you're with us, you agree with us, you're for us. No, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. If that person got their power from the power structure that oppresses you, then you have to, first of all, be very wary of them until they show you that they are actually of you and of your community. So that's all I have on this subject. What do you guys think? What do you think about Oprah? Is she targeting black men? Are people going hard against her for no reason? I'd love to know your thoughts. I'll see you guys in another video. Hi everyone, this is Tierney Cherie. As I've stated in a number of videos, I am part of an organization called We Charge Colonialism, and we are seeking to go to the United Nations for the purpose of petitioning the United Nations for recognition that the United States is guilty of colonizing African Americans. How have they been colonizing us? If you look at every single system in the United States government, whether it's the education system, whether it's the prison system, whether it's the banking and mortgage system, every single system shows that the United States government has put us into a position where they are benefiting off of our suffering. They are benefiting off of our labor. They are benefiting off of our misery. This is the type of relationship that occurs inside of a colony where the host country is benefiting from the colony. They're abstracting resources. They're abstracting manpower. They're abstracting anything that they can from that people and leaving the people with nothing, leaving the people destitute. Now, the reason why this is important is because we have to recognize that this is what has happened to our people in the United States, the same way as what has happened to our people in the Caribbean, to our people on the continent of Africa, to people all throughout the world. But if we recognize that the African Americans who are enslaved in America were also colonized and are still being colonized, then that means that we have a right to redress. That redress means we have internal self-determination. We have the right to control our institutions. We have the right to control our criminal justice system. The same system that has been oppressing us, when it has been controlled by the outside government, we have a right to control that government ourselves. We have a right to control our police departments. We have a right to control our education systems. We have a right to control our child welfare systems. Now, many of you might be thinking, they're not going to let us control our systems. Well, you need to do your history, because if you know about the Native American movements, you know that there was a time where the United States government was not willing to recognize their right to self-governance. However, because they rallied the people, because they organized the people, they were able to actually impose to not just impose, but to put into the Congress the mentality that, you know what, these Native Americans, they do deserve the right to their own selves, because we have not been doing well by them. We have not been doing well by them, and that we've been taking their children, we have been oppressing them, we've been taking their land, we've been inflicting warfare on them. Because of that, we cannot rightfully claim that we have a right to these people, or they have a right to be under our government. The same thing should be of the mentality of African Americans, that we have to understand that every single system in the United States, since its inception, has been made and built to oppress us. If you think that's going to change in the near future, I'm very curious to know why and how, because there's no sign of it changing, and there's no sign of the wealth gap closing. In fact, the wealth gap's only getting worse. That means that we're only going to be more oppressed. We're only going to be more subjugated. We're only going to be more taken advantage of. So for that reason, we have to have control of our institutions, and we have control over our institutions. We make a rightful claim that our people have been the victim of colonization, have been a victim of racism, slavery, have been a victim of something that has amounted and caused our people to be in severe distress today. So it is for that reason why we're going to the United Nations, and we're saying that we have been colonized, and the redress for that colonization is that we need control over our neighborhoods. We need control over the systems that are over-representing us. We need control over those systems, because the dominant system has proven time and time again that it will not do right by Black people. If you are interested in joining this effort, there are a number of committees that you can join. There's a membership support committee. There's a PR committee, there's a media relations committee, there's a project management committee. We have so many committees, and the fact is, so many of us have talents that are useful for this effort. Even if you think that, you know, maybe you're not necessarily an activist, maybe you don't want to necessarily draft a petition to go to the United Nations, but you just have some type of talent that you think that we could use as we do this effort, please join. Please email us at WeChargeColonialism. If you maybe you don't have any time, maybe you're completely booked up, but you just want to actually take a part in the effort and keep tabs on what's going on, become a We Charge Colonialism supporter. That way we can actually communicate with you what actions we're taking and what type of rallying we have to do as a people. But certainly if you have talents and abilities that you feel like could be useful to us, come join, help us out, because this is something that we're trying to do not for ourselves, but for the whole community of Black people in America. That is all we have on this. We will see you soon.